Hi again. So in this lecture, we're going to summarize what we have seen before. So we have seen in the first lecture, we have seen the definition of the BIOS. And we have seen that the BIOS is a program that is charged to start the computer system after it is powered on. Okay? And we have seen that it is also manages the data flow between the computer and the Windows or the operating system. And of course, with attached devices like keyboard, mouse, printer, hard disk drive, optical disk drive, etc. We have seen that the BIOS is a group of instructions on how to check the computer hardware. And after that, we have seen an overview about the basic input-output system. So we have seen that there is a lot of types of BIOS. So like Win, Bond, like Intel, like HTML, etc. And we have seen that the very common used BIOS is the BIOS with 8 pins. Okay, and also the pin number 1, as you can see here, is marked with this dot here, and the pin number 4 is always connected to the ground, and the pin number 8 is always connected to VCC or 3.3 volt. Okay, the BIOS sizes, and I teach you that in order to know about the BIOS sizes, you should read the reference above the body of the BIOS. So here we have the sizes. When you find 1 in the reference, that means the size of BIOS is 128 kilobyte. So 2 megabit means 256 kilobyte. 4, when you find 4, that means 512 kilobyte. But this here, those values are the value that is commonly used in BIOSes. Okay, so when you find 8 megabit in the BIOS, when you find, for example, 25Q8 or 16 or 32 or 64 megabit, that means this values. So 8 megabit equal 1 megabyte. 16 megabit equal 2 megabyte. 32 megabit equal 4 megabyte, and 64 megabit equal 8 megabyte. You know why? Because 8 bit equal 1 byte. Okay, that's why when we convert from the megabit to megabyte, we divide it by 8. Okay, so of course here we have other values like 128 megabit that equals to 60 megabyte, and 256 megabits equal to 32 megabytes. Okay, then we have seen the BIOS pin configuration, as you can see, and I teach you how you can download the BIOS manual or datasheet from the internet. And of course, I show you a lot of websites that where you can download this datasheets just for free. Okay, so this is one kind of datasheet. As you can see here, we have a wind bond company of BIOS. As you can see, we have here, as you can see, we have 25Q says, as you can see, 25Q16 means 16 means what? Means 2 megabytes, as we have seen here. So 16 means 2 megabytes. Okay, so here you can find, of course, many shape or many type of BIOSes. This is the same BIOS but with a different pin configuration. For this BIOS, I see it contains just 8 pins, and for this it contains 16 pins. Okay, and of course here this is its datasheet where you can find everything about this BIOS. Okay, you can find all characteristics. Okay, you can find also, as you can see here, so the features, as we have seen before. Here we have 25Q16, so 16 means 16 megabit or 2 megabyte, as you can see here. Okay, So we have here the features. As you can see, this is the pin configuration. We have seen that the BIOS always in each pin number 1. As you can see, this is the, so in pin number 1, this is the chip selects input. Here we have the data output in pin number 2. In pin number 5 we have data input. Okay, so in pin 3 we have write protect, here always connected to the ground. So in pin 6 we have the clock. Okay, so in pin 7, as you can see, this is the hold, the data input output, this is the hold input output, and here the VCC, the power supply. Always the VCC for this kind of BIOSes is 3.3 volts. Okay, for the other kind of BIOSes, as you can see, with 16 pins, this is its pin configuration, as you can see. So the VCC is in pin number 2, as you can see, and here all these 4 pins means not connected. These pins are not used. Here we have the chip select, of course here we have hold. This is the data output. Here we have the clock in pin number 16. So data input. Okay, here all these pins are not connected, so we have ground and we have the write protect. Okay, the same pin configuration. Okay, as you can see, no connect or not connected. Okay, after that we have seen the BIOS faults. Okay, so we have seen that among the BIOS faults, when the computer wants to start, the black screen, so when the laptop is on but the screen is still black, the BIOS errors, when you get a lot of errors, when you're powering on the computer and you get a black screen with many errors, so the computer won't start and the power lead or the caps lock lead blanked. Okay, of course, if you have a dead motherboard, when you press the power button, no response, but when you check the voltages, you find that all voltages are correct. Okay, you find the 3 volt, the 5 volt, the 19 volt is good in the power jack, the 3 volt is present in the pin number 8 of the BIOS. So all component, all chips, no hit, no hot chip, all components seems to be good. The motherboard is not broken. You check the connectors, you find that all the connectors is not damaged. All voltages is present, but the problem still here. The motherboard is dead, means 100% you should reprogram the BIOS. You have a corrupted file inside the BIOS. Okay, so another failure now is no data in the computer screen. When you get a computer, the computer is powered on or LED are on, but no data in the screen. The screen can be a black screen, a white screen, a blue screen, a green screen, okay, but no data. This means the problem is in the BIOS. You have a corrupted file. You should reprogram the BIOS, okay? After that, the next failure is the beeps. When you power on your computer, you hear a lot of beeps. Okay? Of course, these beeps means there is a problem somewhere. But the problem can be in the RAM. Maybe the RAM chip are not installed correctly in its slots. Maybe you have a problem with the hard disk drive. Maybe the graphic card. Maybe some connectors are not connected correctly. So if you check all these accessories and all these parts, you check the memory, especially the random access memory. If you check the random access memory, you find it connected correctly to the RAM slot. You check all connectors, you check the hard disk drive, the ODD or the optical disk drive, and you find all this are correct, are installed correctly, but the beeps still here, still persist, means you should reprogram the BIOS. The BIOS file is probably corrupted, okay? Etc. Okay? After that, we have seen what we need to program the BIOS. And we have seen that the 4 major part that is important if you want to reprogram the BIOS IC is. The BIOS IC itself, okay? So sometimes you should remove or you have to remove the BIOS IC from the motherboard and put it in a specific adapter and then put it in the programmer. And sometimes you can just use a clip. There is some motherboard or some programmer that contain a clip like this. So in this case, you can just let the BIOS installed in the motherboard without removing it, and just go ahead and connect this clip directly to the motherboard, to the BIOS in the motherboard, and then connect the programmer to the laptop, and then you can program it. Okay, so we have, of course, we have the BIOS IC, we have the programmer and the software. So the software is here one of the main important parts, because here we have the firmware. Okay, so to transfer this firmware to the BIOS IC, of course you need the programmer and you need an interface. The interface, the software interface is this. This is the software. Through this software, this firmware will go here to the BIOS IC, and of course through the programmer. So you will need to program the BIOS, you will need the BIOS IC itself, the programmer, the software, and the firmware. The firmware is basically the serviceable file. Okay, the serviceable file. So you will find this. The extension of this firmware is usually binary or hex. Okay, so a hex or binary. Okay, so after that we have seen the programmer, we have studying the programmer, we have studying the software, we have studying also the firmware, how to download the firmware. Okay, and also I teach you how to download the software. Of course, the software comes with the programmer in a CD-ROM, but you can also download it from the internet. So we have seen how to program the BIOS chip step by step. Okay, and of course I teach you how to convert the AXA file to bin file or to binary file. So of course, to reprogram the BIOS, you will need the file or the firmware. But of course, you should look for the firmware. You can't find the firmware when you go to Google. You can just type the reference of the firmware, for example, the model of the laptop or computer, then type BIOS firmware, and you can get the firmware automatically. But sometimes you cannot find the firmware with bin extension. So in this time, maybe you should buy the firmware somewhere in a website, or I teach you a trick that you can use to convert an executive file to a binary file, because executive file always exists. Okay, you can just go to Google and, for example, type the model of the laptop or of the computer and drivers, and among the drivers you will find the BIOS driver, but executive file. So I teach you using some commands how to convert an executive file that has an extension, AXA extension, to a bin file or a binary file. So we have seen that you should open the CMD window, the command window. So you can just press from the keyboard Windows R, okay, as you can see, and then the run windows will be opened for you. Okay, then you can just type CMD, okay, and press enter, and you will get, as you can see, the CMD windows. And in the CMD windows, I teach you how to type or how to enter these commands. As you can see, you should type the first command is cd, then the path of the folder, then you should press enter, then you will type rename star dot star space dot star dot point bin or binary, and then press enter, and automatically the exe file or the executive file will be converted to the bin file. Okay, I teach you also how to look for a good programmer. Okay, so here for example, this is the Amazon website. You can just go to Google and write, for example, BIOS programmer, and you can check the big website like Amazon, like AliExpress, like Alibaba, etc. So here, as you can see, in Amazon we have found many programmers, and we have studied this programmer, this TL866. We have seen this programmer, and we have seen that this is a very easy programmer, a very simple programmer. So this programmer contain many accessories, as you can see here. So extractor, USB cables, adapters, etc. And we have seen also another programmer that you can use to program the BIOS without removing it from the motherboard, as you can see here using this clip. So here we have a lot of programs, as you can see. Okay, we have seen also how to download the software for the programmers and the IC supported list. Okay, so and we have studied this programmer, the TL866. We have seen that you can just click here into download to download the software, and of course we have seen the IC supported list. Okay, and we find that this kind of programmer can support all operating system. Okay, as you can see here. So here we have Windows 2000 XP, 2003, 2008 Vista, Windows 7 with 32-bit and 64-bit, Windows 8 and Windows 10, etc. And of course the supported devices is more than 14,000 pieces. Okay, so as you can see here, a lot of thousands of ICs. So this is just one example of the programmer that we have seen, but there are a lot of programmers, so the choice is for you. You can choose any programmer you want. But for example, this kind of programmer, the TL866, support a lot of ICs. So you can flash or reprogram any BIOS IC using this programmer. You can program, for example, the laptop BIOSes, the television BIOSes, and other electronic devices. Okay,